were to lose it all and start my business all over again, here's exactly what I would do. I don't know about you, but every single time I learn from different experts in the industry, whether I'm trying to learn email marketing, whether I'm trying to learn how to create different offers, whether I'm trying to learn how to create better content, I'm always curious, what would that specific business owner do if they were to lose it all and start from scratch? Because every single time you learn from, let's just say, a 6 or 7 figure earner and you're not there yet, you kind of start to wonder, okay, so what they're teaching right now is what they're doing now at the level that they're at. But what if you are maybe at multiple 5 figures, maybe you are just like at 5K months, maybe you're just getting started. So wherever you are in your journey right now, where you're listening to this episode, you might be thinking, but what would they do if they were to get started all over again? So I personally love this question and I wanted to answer this myself in this episode. Before I share what I would do, I also want to share what I would not do. The very first thing that I would never do is try to serve everyone, because I learned this early on in my network marketing days. When you're trying to sell to everybody, you are essentially selling to nobody, and this applies to every single type of business. Now, unless you sell ice cream, you're still not going to appeal to everybody. Unless you are selling something like a Temu store, for example, they cater to everybody, but you have a very specific business, you have a very specific offer, and your customers and clients are not every single person. Let me actually even say this. Imagine you have an Etsy shop, and maybe you are specifically selling, I'm going to use my favorite fan fiction in the book talk industry, Dramini. So if you don't know what it is, Google it, message me on Instagram, and I'll gladly chat with you about that. But let's say you are selling merch with Dramini for all the book lovers, for all the Dramini fanfiction lovers. You're not going to appeal to every single reader. You're not going to appeal to even every single person on the planet. It's a very specific niche. It's the people who are going to search for that keyword. And I'm saying this as somebody who's done it. I've searched Dramini on Etsy to find different things, to find t-shirts, to find merch, to find anything that the fans have been making, and it's so fascinating to me. And there's not a whole lot of stuff either. So think about your business this way as well. Your business and products and services are not for everybody. The other thing that I would never do, and I never recommend this, especially as somebody who's teaching content, as somebody who has a content creation program, I would never post random content to see what sticks. Because I know there's so much advice these days, oh, don't follow the niche. And I kind of do agree with that. You don't necessarily need a niche, but you kind of do. Because if you're building a personal brand, a lot of the times your personal brand is going to become your niche. But at the same time, please, please, please do not use a single platform or even any kind of new social media platform that nobody knows about. Don't use it to post random stuff just to see what sticks. Because yes, in the beginning, not a lot of people are watching. Yes, in the beginning, you're not going to appeal to a lot of people, so you just kind of want to test things out. But I would never personally do that. I think that's a very bad advice. I don't think that posting random stuff is going to get you anywhere, because again, you need a specific lane where you're going to stick to. And I know how we don't like to be limited, we like to be free birds, and we like to do different things, and we're multi-passionate entrepreneurs. I get that. I'm like that as well. But there's a difference between posting something strategic and posting something intentional versus posting something just for the sake of posting it. And let me tell you, every single time I forced myself to post something just because I have to stay consistent, I have to post every single day, it never worked out. It would always be a crappy post. I would feel crappy about it. My people would read it and they would be like, what the hell is that? They would never say it, but I know that's how people would be thinking about it, because I genuinely knew that's a bad post. Then I would go back and delete it because I just don't feel proud of it. So that's the same thing about shit posting. That's what it's called these days. Don't worry, I'm going to share with you exactly what to do and what to do about your content once we get to that section of the episode. The third thing that I would never do is only posting on content and not selling anything. So we know that there is a book by Gary Vee called Jab, 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 Right Hook. And I love that approach where you give value, give value, give value, and then only then you start asking for a sale. However, the problem with that is a lot of the times entrepreneurs just get so good at content creation, and then while they're posting, let's say you post content for 90 days, you're consistent, you're doing it, you not promote anything, and then by the end of the 90 days you got really good at content creation, but then that's all you're good at. And in my opinion, you have to start infusing selling a little bit, even if it's going to be a free offer, even if it's going to be a $7 offer, even if it's going to be something. Start getting comfortable with giving call to actions in your social media posts. Start getting comfortable with emailing your list. We're going to talk about that in this episode as well. Start getting comfortable with promoting, because if there's one thing that I see a lot of coaches struggle with, and that is something that I struggled with myself as well, is content creation is easy, but selling is the hard part. And that's exactly why there are certain influencers, quote unquote influencers on social media, who have millions of followers, but their bank account still doesn't reflect that. The fourth thing that I would not do is focus on 5 different social media platforms, because yes, it's important to be on all of them. You're physically not going to be able to be showing up on every single one of them consistently and building your audience. I would much rather focus on 1 or 2 platforms, and we're going to talk about what kind of platforms to focus on, and get really good at it. Focus on building your audience on one platform, because think about it. And I've done this as well. Like, I've attempted to build on multiple platforms. So here's what happens. When you actually look into what it's like to grow on every single social media platform, yes, you have to post content, but something else that a lot of entrepreneurs miss out on is the interaction with your audience, is replying to the DMs, is messaging through the DMs, interacting in Facebook groups, for example, interacting on LinkedIn groups, interacting with LinkedIn influencers. Commenting is a growth strategy that a lot of people forget about. And here's what happens. You make a content calendar, let's say for Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, 3 platforms. Sure, you can post the same content, but then you have to spend at least an hour on each platform to interact, in my opinion. Even if it's 30 minutes, it's still 30 minutes per platform, and you know how time goes when you start engaging with people. 30 minutes on Instagram, 30 minutes on Facebook. I would even say 45 on each just to be average, but let's just say 60 minutes. You would spend between 2 to 3 hours every day just interacting between 3 platforms. You are better off focusing everything on Facebook, for example, if that's your platform of choice, organically. That's what I'm talking about, the personal profile. Get good at that. Interact in Facebook groups, get into paid communities, engage with your audience, add people, message them. That's exactly what I did in the very beginning, and that's what really worked for me early on. But we're going to talk about that in detail. Rather than you doing that on 3 different platforms and getting 3 times the overwhelm, I like just thinking about it. And I say this as somebody who now interacts on multiple different platforms, but I don't make all of the platforms my focus. And last but certainly not least, I would not spend too much time trying to perfect my aesthetic. And again, I say this as a girl who loves to make things look pretty. But don't overspend your time on trying to get the right graphic. I get it, as a perfectionist, we want to make things look exceptional, we want to make things look amazing, but when you're first getting started, make a couple of templates and stick to them, because your message is a lot more important than the graphics that you publish with. And especially on a platform like LinkedIn, you can get away with very basic graphics. On Facebook, you don't even need graphics a lot of the times. Instagram, yes, you do need some graphics, but again, I would just use in the very beginning the most basic Canva template and just focus on the message rather than the aesthetics, because you're better off sharing your message on a white background with black text rather than making a super busy graphic and then people focusing too much on the prettiness of your graphics, unless of course you're a graphic designer. Yeah, your aesthetics need to matter, and you know that. There are 7 major things that I would do differently if I were to get started today, and this is something that I would recommend for every beginner and also non-beginners. It's kind of going to give you a brief audit of your business, and maybe you'll find some gaps that you can fill. First of all, I would get crystal clear on my character and my brand identity. It's time to really look deep and understand who it is that you are, because if you're building a personal brand, it's going to be vital for you to understand who you are, what your core values are, what's your point of view of different subjects in your industry. And it's not just about your values relevant to your offers and your business, it's also your personal core values. What is important to you? Is it honesty? Is it integrity? Is it fun? Is it humor? What is it that's super important for you that you want your brand to communicate? And the other thing that I also want to say, when it comes to your character, when it comes to your personality, who are you as a person? You really want to dig deep, because that is something that's going to make you different. And this is also the time when you want to look back into your stories. What happened to you in the past? What are some pivotal moments that have really changed the trajectory of your life, maybe prior to the business? What are some of the things that changed throughout your career that got you to where you are right now? And maybe you're at a point where, okay, so I need to kind of like start over in a way. And a couple of practical recommendations here as well. You can even take a personality test to truly understand yourself deep down. I know some people are not huge fans of them. There is a test, 16 personalities. There is DISC profile. There are 4 different colors of personalities. I don't remember what it's called specifically. There is human design. I would actually recommend for you to look into human design. If you're not into horoscopes or anything like that, that's fine, but I would still look into that, simply because you really can learn so much about yourself. You don't even have to believe in horoscope, but that thing is literally written off of yourself. My entire personal brand in 2025 shifted just because I decided to not be blind to my human design. So I highly recommend for you to look into this. It doesn't have to be woo-woo or anything like this, but it is very eye-opening. And you could even ask your friends, what do they think about you? What kind of personality do you have? What are some traits that you have that really make you stand out? I find that asking your friends, especially if they're the kind of friends that pay attention to who you are, that can point out the good, the bad, the ugly in you, it's going to be really helpful, because we're always too close to ourselves. We don't always see what other people see. So it's very refreshing to even ask your friends about your character. And the other thing that you also want to think about is, what do you actually enjoy? What are the things that make you different than everybody else? For example, some of the things that I don't often talk about, I know 4.5 languages, right? So I occasionally share that. I talk a little bit about the shoes, the makeup. So a lot of the audience that I have, they know those are some of my interests. Sometimes, not often, I do talk about drawing, or I show some of my drawings and stuff like that. Think about the things that you actually enjoy besides your business. And I also want you to remember to make a little bit more time for them as well, because and this is like a note to self too, because I sometimes forget to spend time on hobbies. I sometimes forget to do the things that I actually enjoy besides the business, because that's when you get energized, that's when you recharge your batteries, that's when you get all of your inspiration. It's not when you record a podcast episode, it's not when you talk to a client. Actually, sometimes it is. Sometimes you do get amazing ideas from client calls. And aside from the business, think about the fun things that you enjoy doing. So you have to lock in the most important parts: your brand archetype, your brand voice, your core values, and your specific points of view regarding different subjects. And don't be afraid to make them spicy. And don't be afraid to voice your opinions, because that's what's going to attract and repel an audience. And this is extremely important, especially if your personality offline is kind of spicy, if you're quite an edgy person in general, if you like to break the rules like myself, then please don't try to tame your online brand if you are untamed in real life. Talk about those bold opinions, call out whatever BS that you see in the industry, and don't be afraid to make your brand bold and spicy from the get-go. The next step is develop a high income skill and build an offer around it, preferably high ticket. You can choose an affiliate offer when you're completely brand new to the online world, but your offer is always going to convert way better. And I've learned this kind of the hard way. I started with network marketing and then affiliate marketing, and only then I started creating my own digital products and my own coaching offers. And one thing that one of my coaches said very early on, he said, every single offer you create that is yours is always going to convert better because it doesn't exist on the market. But of course, in order for you to charge high ticket, you have to develop a high income skill. And what are those skills? There are quite a few that are really needed these days, and let me share you what those are. Social media management is one of them. It's something that I've done for a very long time for a select number of clients. Virtual assistance is another one of those skills. I wouldn't say necessarily that it's a high income skill, but it is something that you can start with if you absolutely have no skills whatsoever. The most basic skill that you can get into is either any kind of admin tasks, any kind of spreadsheets, even executive assistants. I think it goes under the virtual assistants. So that is kind of the entrance into the digital marketing world. If somebody were to reach out to me and ask, Jay, what do I get into? I don't know what to do. I have no skills whatsoever. I would say learn something online and get into it. And virtual assistants is actually how a lot of the people that I know got into the digital marketing, and then they progressed, like they learned on the job, right? So they learned about social media management, they then maybe learn how to do video editing and things of that nature. And then there's a couple of other skills as well, which is community management, video editing, copywriting, website development, funnel development, and even becoming some sort of AI automation specialist, or even just an automation specialist in general. And I'll give you even a bonus. You can even position your services as something that you do together with AI, because I've seen AI social media agencies, I've seen AI video editing agencies. So essentially, if you target the businesses that just don't have the time or the energy to learn how to use AI, and then you position that service as being honest that, hey, like this is going to be done together with AI. This is my thing. I video edit using AI softwares and automations while also managing it myself. Then, and still having the human element in that, then you can position your services that way. But that's kind of a list of a couple of services that you can think of. And then once you get a skill, you want to package it up into ideally a one-on-one service. And I would highly recommend doing it that way instead of packaging it into a group or a digital course or anything like this, because you can spend hours or even months trying to put together a course and then not selling it. You're better off having a high ticket service, whether you charge $1,000 a month or you have a sort of like package that you work with clients, maybe like 90 days is $1,500 or $2,000 for whatever service that you offer. Pricing is a whole different conversation here. Package it up into a one-on-one service, and that way you can validate the offer through conversations and by working with clients one-on-one. If for any beginner, that's always the best step. Step number 3 is define who you want to work with and who needs your services. Now, I'm not talking about filling out the worksheets with 47 different questions about a customer avatar, about your target audience, and giving them a name. No, that's not what I'm talking about. You simply need to know what kind of business owner you want to work with, especially if you're targeting business owners. Maybe you have a B2C business, right? But I'm saying for me personally, I would just define what kind of business owner do I want to work with, who do they already invest in, what kind of services do they already purchase, what are the gaps in their business that I can fill with my service. And also I want to think about their personality. What kind of characteristics do they already have? Because it's always more fun working with clients who you are kind of on the same wavelength with. And I'm not talking about targeting business owners who are the same age as you. I have worked with clients across different age groups, and a lot of the times I would even relate more to somebody who's older than the people who are younger than me. So just FYI. So don't just narrow it down to the age, but more to the personality traits, how they show up, what kind of qualities do they have as a business owner and as a person in general too. And then think to yourself, where are they already hanging out? Now, I will say this. Just because you're targeting a young generation doesn't mean they don't hang out on Facebook and doesn't mean that they are only on TikTok. I personally believe that every single client that you want, they can be on any platform. So of course there are different platforms. LinkedIn is more towards the professionals. TikTok, yes, there is younger generation. There's also an older generation. Facebook, sure, everybody thinks it's for the boomers. I'm still on Facebook and I still get the most of my clients from Facebook. So where are your clients hanging out? What kind of memberships are they in? What kind of YouTube channels do they follow? Where can you find them and where can you learn more about what they're looking for? Step number 4 is prioritize audience growth. Now, audience growth and visibility can look in multiple different ways. There are a million different strategies that you can implement. There are podcast opportunities, there are collaborations, you can go into Facebook groups, you can post content, you can do outbound community engagement, you can do so many different things, but I would absolutely prioritize that in the very beginning. And I would choose a platform where it's easy to grow quickly. For example, I would not choose YouTube as my only platform if I were to just get started, because I know YouTube is about the long-term play. I know YouTube is where I publish my content and it gets seen sometimes a year or 2 years from now. So you do want to start planting seeds, and I'm going to talk about YouTube in just a second as well. But you want to choose a platform where it's easy to grow organically and where you can also communicate with your audience via DMs. Now, some people choose LinkedIn, some people choose Instagram. I personally chose Facebook very early on because it was really easy to find where people hang out. It was a lot of Facebook groups. I would get into certain memberships, I would get into paid memberships and find people there. And that was actually one of the best strategies that I have used in order to grow my audience very quickly, has been Facebook organic and Facebook groups as well. So I started as somebody who had no audience whatsoever. As if you've listened to any of the previous episodes, you know that my first language is Russian. I didn't have any English speaking friends or anybody who was interested in my business. I started very early at the age of 18. And I had to get out there and find new people and had to make them care about what it is that I had to say. So I went into Facebook groups and I started giving value. So I already knew a little bit of marketing information that I could share, and I just started helping people out in groups. One of my mentors early on told me, when I asked her, how did you grow your brand so quickly? How did you start showing up as a leader? How were you invited to perform webinars and speak on stages? And she said, I literally just went and started adding value to other people's lives. And I know this sounds so simple and even maybe cliche in this day and age, but that's what I started doing. I went into Facebook groups. I started seeing what kind of conversations people were having, what kind of questions they were asking. And I just started filling the gap with my own knowledge. And that's how a lot of people started reaching out to me when they were like, oh, she's so helpful, blah, blah, blah. And then I started building my trust and authority that way. Now, something I used to do that I would not recommend anymore is sending cold DMs. So when I was originally adding a lot of people every single day to my Facebook profile, I would add 20 people a day minimum. So I would send a friend request and I would connect. I never pitched anything, so I wouldn't say that it was a completely cold. Not only would I focus on the educational content, which is important to position my value. If I'm a completely nobody in the very beginning in my journey, I would definitely give a lot of value, but I would also squeeze in some conversion content. I would start talking about my offers subtly, and I would infuse some even psychological triggers to make sure that people are interested in what I have to offer. So I would not necessarily say like, hey, I have this offer, buy this thing. No, I would create content that would make people believe that they need my offer. So I would hit their pain points. I would hit the pleasure points, not those kind of pleasure points. We're not talking about that here, but I would talk about how, let's say if I were to offer video editing services, how my services can save them between 5 to 10 hours a week, if not more. Because you always want to fill the gap. When you're selling, you want to fill the gap. When you're creating content, you also want to fill the gap, especially when it is a sales piece of content, because you want to fill that gap by positioning your service as that gap filler. And I know I've said the word gap so many times, but I hope you got that point. The other thing that I would do is I would pick 2 platforms that would complement each other. One would be a searchable platform, ideally YouTube, because it is so much easier to rank there than it is for your website to rank. And I would choose a social media platform. You can choose any kind of combination. It can be Facebook and YouTube. It can be Instagram and YouTube. It can be LinkedIn and YouTube. Personally, I would choose YouTube because If you are especially a video editor, if you are a graphic designer, you can create short tutorials, and it's pretty easy to rank because tutorials is what gets found. And this is again another topic for another day, but I would start putting the little YouTube videos. I wouldn't care too much about the editing unless you are a video editor and you do want to spend a little bit of extra time making sure your videos are good. But I would start planting those little, I call them clones, because you kind of clone yourself and you put yourself out there on the internet, and then on YouTube, people are going to find you years later. And then something else that I would start from day one is my email list. I would sign up for some sort of software where you don't necessarily have to pay huge dollars or anything for free, just to have either a newsletter or offer some sort of freebie and send at least a weekly email to an audience. So that way you're going to start early on. You're going to have a database that you own. Your own newsletter is always going to be there. That's something that I've carried with myself for years throughout the business. And no one's going to shut that down. No one's going to do anything with that email list. It's always yours. Step number 6 is don't be afraid to be bold and take a stand. So like I mentioned earlier, I would find ways to make my brand a little bit spicy in a way that I'm not afraid to share controversial opinions. I'm not afraid to maybe ruffle some feathers, as the term goes. And also, besides that, I would also leverage storytelling. I would share the stories from my past, whether it is high school, whether it is anything that is relevant to my services and the character that I have, so people can get to know me. Because if there's one thing AI is not going to know about your content, is your story. Sure, you can outsource idea generation, you can outsource so many things to AI, but there's one thing that it doesn't know about you is your stories, unless you tell it your stories, which you don't necessarily have to. But anyway, I would focus on those things. And here's an example of a spicy take on a specific topic. Here's an example of a spicy conversation that you can stir if you are a copywriter. It goes like this: why outsourcing your sales page copy to AI is the worst business move you can make. And then watch, a lot of people are going to come at you and say, no, but I'm using AI, nobody can tell. Shannon, we can tell. We can definitely tell. I mean, I've written some sales pages with AI assistants, and I still had to add more of my own personality, more of my own words, because sometimes it would use words that I would never use. So as a copywriter, you probably know, because here's the thing. AI can do a lot of great things, but AI does not always create super unique content with a personality, because no matter how much you train it, it still a lot of the time spits out the same old thing that you've been given it before. Step number 7, always remain curious and always be open to learning more. And there are 3 very specific things that I want you to focus on learning throughout your entire career, because they're going to serve you incredibly well, no matter the industry that you're in, because you're going to need them all. And they're kind of related to each other as well. Number 1 is psychology and human behavior. Number 2, copywriting, which is very related to skill number 1, and communication, because all of these skills in combination, you're going to use them in every single scenario, not just in business, even in real life. When you know psychology and how people act, you'll know how to manipulate people, but don't get it wrong. Don't do it in an unethical way. And when I say manipulate, to do something good. Let's say if you want your husband to clean the dishes, you can bribe him with something, right? So that's the kind of manipulation I'm talking about. So don't get it wrong, please. Communication is something that you're going to use in everything. You're going to use it in your video. You're going to use it when talking to people in the DMs. You're going to use it at in-person conferences and at networking events. Communication is going to encompass your entire business and life as well, because you need to know how to get your message and point across. And copywriting is something that you just need to know. In my opinion, yes, you can outsource that, but no one is going to write copy as good as you when you know the skill, because you know your story, you know your writing style, you know the kind of quirky names and words that you can use throughout your copy that no copywriter is going to use. I mean, I'm not going to say no copywriter, because there are some really talented copywriters out there, but I personally have 9 times out of 10 would write my own copy because I know how I communicate and how I can sell my own offer. So again, I'm not knocking a single copywriter because sometimes, yes, you do need to hire a copywriter when you have a huge launch, but that's another topic for another day. So these are all the steps that I would take in order to grow my business from scratch if I were to start all over again, if I didn't have a brand, if I didn't have an email list, if I had absolutely nothing but just the knowledge that I have today. This is exactly what I would do. Now, let me take the conversation to you. What would you do differently if you were to get started all over again? Send me a message on Instagram. I'm going to leave my username down below in the show notes. I would love to talk to you about what things you would do differently in your business. And if you're just getting started and you've listened to this episode and you got some really good tips from it, message me and I would love to hear your feedback.